Hey all, it's Jordan. Today I want to talk about therapists. I've talked about this before on my channel, but I want to talk about it today because I think it's important, and I don't think it's talked about enough. So, a good therapist is someone who's going to challenge you on your thoughts and your thinking, even if, it's hard. But they also know when to kind of stop pushing your buttons because they know that there is a limit to how much a person can process in a session. Also, a good therapist is going to look at what you need specifically, and even if it doesn't fully align with their beliefs, they're going to treat you or, work with you on things that you need to work through. So there are certain therapists that you want to go to if you're suffering from depression or PTSD or suicidal ideation or an eating disorder. There are certain therapists that specialize in different types of things. If you're LGBTQ identified, you might consider going to a therapist that not only works with other LGBTQ individuals, but works with the other maybe issues that you're facing. And a good therapist, especially if they're your therapist, when you have family therapy sessions, they're going to have you be present for the entire family therapy session. I had a therapist a couple years ago where when I had a family therapy session, instead of me being in there, he would have me wait in the waiting room and my parents would talk to him for an hour individually, and then I'd be pulled in for 5 minutes. And that's not really what a good therapist does because they're your therapist. They're not your parents' therapist. They're not here to, listen to your parents' problems. They're here to help you work through issues that you have together, which means you need to be in the same room in order to kind of hear both sides and come to compromise or an agreement or whatever. And so you just really want to be careful about that. If they try to tell you that being gay or lesbian or transgender or agender or gender fluid or gender queer or queer is wrong and you identify as one of those, that's probably also a sign that they're not a good therapist. I had a therapist once when I was in an outpatient treatment program who said that I was a fetish for people because I identified as male but didn't necessarily have all the physical characteristics of what society classifies as male. And I tried to challenge them on this. Gave them the definition or a definition of pansexual, which is that basically someone is comfortable dating someone regardless of gender. And they still dismiss this idea. This therapist also told me that they weren't going to be able to diagnose me as transgender because it was a group therapy setting. Yet when I had a family therapy session a couple months in, they told my parents that I was not a candidate to medically transition or to identify as transgender without even talking to me prior to this or explaining to me why they thought this after they said that they weren't going to be able to evaluate me for this issue. So if you run into that, I would advise you to look for a different therapist. But if you and your therapist just have disagreements, then I see no reason why you can't continue going to this therapist. I have had several therapists that I clash with, but it gets me to readjust my thinking or at least process the way I'm thinking and think about whether I need to change the way I'm thinking. I had one therapist that I would always write letters to because I never felt like either I was heard in therapy or maybe I couldn't articulate something the way I wanted to, or maybe I was scared to tell them something, so I'd write them letters almost every time that I met with them for them to read at a future session. And they read every single one, and it really furthered my therapy and my self-reflection process because we were able to clear up miscommunications and maybe face some of the harder topics that I couldn't necessarily bring up in person, but we knew were there. So a good therapist will take the time to kind of see different ways you do best at articulating things that might be challenging for you, and they will do whatever they can to accommodate that if they think it's going to help you in your therapy. At least that's what a good therapist should do. And I don't know everything. I've only been to a handful of therapists. There are a lot of therapists out there that I haven't gotten to experience, but I do know that I've been lucky enough to have 2 really good therapists in my life, and I've been unfortunate to have many therapists that are a good fit for me. Not every therapist is going to be a good fit for you. So maybe you have to go see a therapist 2 or 3 times before you know if they're going to be a good fit. And another thing that I want to share with you is one of my therapists kind of did almost a self-report survey where this would be in the first meeting, and they asked me, why I was seeing them, what did I want to work on, what did I hope to get out of therapy. They asked for some background, they asked for some family history, things like that. And although I didn't answer everything, it gave them a good basis from where to start. And then all my therapists have asked to see the records of from my other therapists, and a good therapist will do this because they know that you might not be able to articulate everything the same way over and over, and it gives them a good history of your therapy sessions and things that you may still need to work on or things that you've made progress in, and it'll just save a lot of time in terms of if you can't go over every little detail if you have to transfer or switch therapists. Anyway, guys, I hope that some of this information was beneficial. I am by all means not an expert, so this is just my advice, but there are lots of other tips and tricks that people use out there to identify a good therapist. So please do not use me as your only source, but I hope that this gave you a basis of maybe what a good therapist might be versus a bad therapist. And I will see you guys all soon.